All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our Products That Count webinar. Today's session is a must for product leaders navigating one of the most overlooked, but I will say mission critical functions to a product organization, product operations. Before we jump into that conversation, though, I want to highlight a few of the things that make Products That Count such a really unique community and such a valuable space for product professionals. First, there are over 500,000 product managers reached. That means we are one of the largest and most influential networks of product managers globally. Expert resources from C-level, VP level podcasts and webinars to those amazing individual contributors that really move mountains in product. We are constantly sharing thought-provoking articles and video content. Really, our library of content is built to support product people at every stage of their career. So whether you're looking to sharpen your skills, explore emerging trends, or lead your team more effectively, Products That Count is your go-to destination for great content. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Denise Hemke, and I'm honored to be your host for today's session. Outside of my role as the San Francisco chapter lead for Products That Count, I'm the Chief Product Officer at NeoGov, where we deliver purpose-built HR and public safety software for government agencies. I am thrilled today to welcome our special guest speaker, Uma Welingkar, a seasoned product and engineering executive with deep experience in driving transformation, growth, and operational excellence at scale. Uma has held leadership roles in companies like Oracle, Infor, Siebel, and Avalara. It is quite a resume. But in addition to that, she's done multiple startups, including being a co-founder. She was also named one of the top 50 women in tech in 2021. And she's also part of the Products That Count community. So she is on both the Advisory Award Council and our AI Council. So thank you, Uma, especially for all that you do for Products That Count too. But beyond that, Uma is passionate about delivering customer-centric solutions and empowering organizations to navigate complexity, embrace change, and turn strategy into measurable outcomes. And in this session, Uma's going to explore why even the best product strategy can fall flat without the structure, alignment, and cross-functional coordination that product operations provides. From intake and prioritization to launch readiness and real-time reporting, she'll unpack how this small but mighty team helps product leaders scale execution and how AI is transforming their impact across the product lifecycle. Before we dive in, though, a housekeeping note. If you have questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to drop them into the Zoom Q&A box. If you can't find that, oftentimes it might be hiding under that ... menu where you will find the Q&A. And we'll address as many questions as we can during this second half of the presentation. So stay tuned for that. And with that, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Uma.
Thank you, Denise. Let me get started. I'll share the presentation. And here we go. And I'll do play. It's a little bit of a... So let's start with, a bit of the icebreaker. And one of the reasons we want to do this is just kind of get started with knowing people. And people generally don't think this about me because I've lived in the Bay Area for almost 30 plus, or I think almost 35 plus years now. But I did take a break, went to grad school in Memphis. I love the Blues, but I'm also a big NCAA fan. So, when it's March, my team would always make fun. Don't get her on a plane, don't get her anywhere because all she'll be doing is watching basketball. But, that's one of the things about team sport that make your job and my job as a product manager and leader really key because we need to work together to get things done. So that's sort of a little bit about me. I was in the 89 quake. I always make fun that, that building now where I was is the Four Seasons Hotel on Market Street. And really, all we were doing is trying to get ready to watch the baseball series. Of course, San Francisco lost 4-0, but it's something that I remember all my life. I'll never forget. And then when it comes to who would be sort of play me, I really love Regina King because I think she's got funk and sass. Not sure I do, but I do think I would like someone like that to kind of add that, right, to what you're already doing. And this may sound really cliched when I say this, but the favorite quote that I have is from RGB is, fight for the things that you care about. And I think this is really important because when you are doing something like product and really making sure that you're trying to get this, out the door, you can't do it alone. You have to do it with others, but you also need to do it in such a way that um, it will lead others to you, right? Because that really is the key when it comes to not just product, but also, what we will talk about a little bit really around the operations aspect of it. So with that, we'll really dive into sort of what does really product operations mean? A lot of times people kind of think about it as, oh, it's operations, it's project management, or it's just program management. But reality is you have to bridge the gap between vision. You have your company's mission, you have the product vision, and you really need to execute. And sometimes you can execute as well, but then you fall flat in some of the other things that's really important, whether it's launch, whether it's support readiness, and even customer engagement. So really, when we think about what product operation means, it's really the start from product conception to even sunset. It's something that you really need to think about. I always tell people a good product manager is not the one who just brings products to market, but also recognizes and knows when to sunset a product. So all of that really is part of that product operations. It's managing all of the market dynamics. It's making sure the cross-functional teams are aligned together, working in conjunction. But that's not the only thing what the ops does. It makes sure that there's consistency between teams. And as you see team scaling, so as you start seeing, additional products bring coming in, or even, M&A and acquisitions that happen, there's always differences. There's little differences in each team and how they function. And when that consistency kind of goes amiss, you're not able to really look at overall whether we're operating at that 100% efficiency that we should be operating at. So it becomes really important that we have that consistency and the same kind of accountability and measurement across all of the various different teams. And last but not the least, a small team can also help with resource allocation. So prioritization, if things need to change, they have that overview of everything. So you as a product manager doesn't have to kind of deal with sort of these tasks that take away your time in doing what you should be doing, which is focused on really the why and the what, and the why being the most important thing on what you're trying to build and deliver to the market. So with that, we look at it and go, we just talked about it's not delivery, right? It is that end-to-end product orchestration. So just like a conductor, right? You could, as a PM, you may be the conductor, but in reality, you need all of these different people. And it's not just the individual success. Like they may be great at playing one instrument, but that doesn't really help us. And that collective sound from these various different artists is what makes that orchestra. And if you think about product delivery, it's exactly like that, right? It really needs to bring the best in all of the various different teams to deliver not just on time, but also deliver on the value and outcome. So the one thing that people always kind of think about is when they think about product ops, they're like, oh, it's just Jira or whatever tool that you're using, right? It could be Jira, it could be AHA, or they'll think, oh, it's a launch. We just need to launch this, or it's just reporting. We need to provide these reports and dashboards to our internal teams and just keep everybody in the same loop. It really isn't, right? It's that whole orchestration from intake prioritization up until you launch and enable and get customers on the adoption track, because that's the key, right? You can deliver, you can launch, but if the customers don't adopt what you're kind of delivering, you again fall flat. So important things to think about as you're looking at product operations. And the one key thing that I would say is product operations should really be part of the product organizations, or should really be reporting to, whether it's a CPO or an SVP of products, however the structure is laid out. The operations team, that tiny team, really needs to be part of that product organization, so they're in line and in tune with, where the product is headed and what we want to get done. So that's another key distinction that I would make, is that both these teams should really be aligned and working together very closely. So let's start with sort of the first phase of it. And if you see, I've put a little, churn here, or a hurricane. So in a lot of ways, intake and prioritization is really key. And the reason this is really important to me, and I've heard this in so many different places, in so many different ways. It could be a sales team, it could be a customer, it could be support that says, oh, I told your team to build me this thing, and it's been, 2 years, something's not done, or it's been 9 months, something's not done, or there's time where they say, we told we need something, but it doesn't get done. And it's not that the PMs aren't doing it. They just have so much that comes in. There are various different teams. It doesn't matter if it's B2B or B2C. There's various different stakeholders that provide inputs, from sales to support to exec escalations to customers to competitive intelligence, you name it. There's tons of things that come through. And one of the things that would make it really hard in the past was everybody needed to write down. So in the old days, like we would have a little, chart, right? We'd have a little form that people would fill in, and the form could be for tactical stuff, and for something that's a little bit larger, they would, write up a one pager to say, here's what we're looking for. Now, what you can do is you can use a lot of AI tools, right? You can use a lot of tools. And one of the things that really is important as you look at and build this team is this team can be just people that are all program managers. You need to make sure your skills in the team matches what you're looking for. So you need to have a couple builders, like one or two builders that can build some of these AI tools quickly and easily. So you're able to do some of these things. So when it comes to intake prioritization, making sure that the things that are coming in from the various streams don't become really noisy, but are kind of delivering for that business impact, and have that continuous sort of meeting. So this team, that small and mighty team that we're talking about, you have one person, it could be one or two, depending on how large your organization is, that is focused on this intake and prioritization. They kind of set the meetings up so the PMs are ready to provide the data that they have to their stakeholder to say, here's how the roadmap looks like. Here are things that came in. Here's what we dropped. Here's what we're doing, and the reasons why we're doing it. So the PM's really focused on why, and they're not focused on what it takes to get it done. The the systematic process that happens is done by this ops team. And so that the person that's running this intake and prioritization also really needs to understand why we're doing some of the things. So you can't just take a program manager that's the same across all of the different functions, but you really need to understand the skill sets of who can do this job really impactfully. So all your PMs and your teams are now focused on really working with customers, working with the stakeholders, providing that human touch that they need for these. And as you look at some of these things, one of the things that you also need to look at is, time to request, right? Stakeholder stats. Are those, meeting? Are things efficient? So things don't work, you need to change that process and need to change. So it has to be continuously adapted and changed for things that need to move. So that becomes really important when it comes to intake and prioritization. And one thing that I will tell you, if you do this really well, your stakeholders really become your good friends. They're always willing to work with you. They're willing to work with you if you can do something, and they're willing to really come up with opportunities of collaborating and working with customers as well. So really important to do this step well and also explain why you're doing it. And the second one is, this is an easy one. This is really almost every company does this. Everyone does execution and reporting, but most often the execution and reporting is done very specifically just around engineering execution. So here's, the stories are written, here's where we are, here's what's happening. What gets missed in this execution and reporting is some of the things that we got from the intake and prioritization. Which ones did we take? Which ones did we drop? But really mapping them so they can, both the C-suite as well as the stakeholders, especially, heads of sales, or even your pre-sales team is aware of what's coming or what's dropped and why it got dropped. There could be multiple reasons, but they're done, right? And this execution and reporting can't be just your engineering velocity. It has to be across the board on not just when engineering is getting done, but is marketing going to be ready? Is enablement going to be ready? So this execution and reporting really, again, needs to go through that entire kind of product life cycle. And one of the reasons it really needs to do that is when the product gets out the door, as we call it, like our old CEO used to say, the product just leaves the door. I don't see anything happening after it. So what he was referring to are all of the launch done, is the enablement done, are customers able to use it? So again, making sure that it's not just R&D that's responsible for delivering stuff, but it's making sure everybody that is responsible for creating that final product has signed off and everything's ready to go. Again, using some of the specific like analytics here, use a team or use the person who really knows the tools really well, is able to articulate why we're using certain tools, why we don't need tool proliferation, right? Making sure that we're aligning and getting all of the things ready in the tools for both the PMs and engineers to be able to use it easily. So that becomes really important as we're looking at how do we create the team and who are the people that need to be part of this small team. But the focus should be really for the PMs, not spending their time on getting status out, but working with the engineers as well as customers on, has the product been built to the specifications that they were looking for? So is 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 the product really the why that they were looking for, and is it done the way they needed to get done? So all of the human touch is really important in this phase, and we want PMs to be really focused on that, high touch, human sort of empathy around the product, then spending time around, finding the status or chasing the status with the different teams. They should be able to look at the dashboard, provide that information just like anybody else in the room. So that's really the key when we talk about execution and reporting. And the next thing is, this is very similar to the execution and reporting, but cross-team dependency. And how many of you probably have gone through this? I know so many of you, including me, right? We've all gone through it where, one team is ready, everything's all done, and they just missed a cross team. Either someone just missed the dependency or someone didn't tell the other team that this needs to get delivered, in the next, 2 weeks versus 4 weeks later, or the priorities between the different teams were amiss. So this cross-team navigation and dependency is really key in kind of creating these dashboard and reports as well. And then having a PM to chase every single one for the cross-team dependency is almost like, spending their time where they shouldn't be, right? That should be done by somebody else. And now, especially with AI, you can do all of these. There's automatic checklists that can be done, automatic meetings, including intelligent routing of any of the alerts, any of the changes that come up, that these can easily be flagged up even before something goes amiss. So this team dependency is key when it comes to delivering products, where it's not just one team that delivers something, because there's always platform that has to build something. There's applications. There's always some sort of dependency between various teams. So again, navigating this becomes the key. And here is another place where you need to get the right people, and program managers, the ones that are really good around managing these projects, are good to drive these initiatives and to make sure that all of the teams are in sync. And someone who doesn't really, I always make fun, they have to be like a dolphin. They can't really get upset, because it's really a hard job trying to get everybody aligned and working together. So that becomes really the key on who do you find, who do you put in this role. So next we go to, we're kind of all ready. Things have come together. We've executed. The product's ready. We're ready to get out the door. That's great. But if launch and support readiness is not done, if support's not ready, if the internal success teams are not done, you're in a lot of trouble, because customers don't know how to use it. And sometimes the customers may know how to use it because we've already worked with the customers, or we've trained customers, we've done A/B testing, but your support teams have no knowledge of what's happened. So any customer questions that come up, they can't even respond and take care of anything. So this is why it really is important for launch and support readiness to go together. So you have launch, which is sort of, around more of the marketing as well as the support side of the house, but really readiness from a support standpoint is making sure if customer questions come in, issues come in, really making sure the support team's ready, which is not the same as just giving them marketing materials, right? They really need to be trained, understand how the product works. They've used the product, and most often, again, given what we already have, we did this in one of the jobs that I was in recently. We put the Copilot. So the product had a Copilot right next. So when the support agent would talk to the customer, they could exactly see what was going on. So that's another big piece that you can work with the support team on, and they really want to work with us, right? They don't look, you have to be really specific to make sure that you're not taking their job away from them, right? This is to make their job a lot more easily and a lot more easier. And that is really the key when it comes to embedding some of these, AI co-pilots really within your product as well. And making sure that support's ready, is able to answer the questions that the customers are wary of or are concerned about, and making sure all of these are done accurately, right? And lastly, the biggest piece of it is customer engagement and feedback. So whether it's, cabs, whether it's any of the stuff that you continuously get feedback from your customers, again, have a small team that is focused on working with all of the different products that you have in the company. If you have just one product, doesn't matter. Rather than, you can have the PM really focused on talking about the product, getting everything ready, but have this customer engagement team, which could be one or two people, but again, that have worked with customers before, have that customer empathy, understand the customer needs, potentially may have worked in the product as well before, but really want to do something different. And they're great at this job because they can get everything set up from what the customers need, the customer, whether it's webinars, whether it's callback, whether it's forums and interviews, and the feedbacks that they can get in, and translating the feedback, whether it's from, the the meetings themselves, from the calls that are there, into potential sort of backlog items, but kind of groom them even before it comes to the PM. So the PMs can then use that again to go back through that in prioritization, the whole cycle that comes together. So again, it's really important that you look at all of these little pieces, but as you're looking at every one of these and you're going through this cycle of the complete product life cycle, the thing that you need to look at is make sure the metrics are being captured, but the metrics are even being measured. So any deviation, anything that you see is different, would call for changing the process potentially or changing the way you're doing things. So keeping that constant change and an eye on what you're finding out is really the key, because you can't set something in place and use it forever. It will be constantly changing, and you have to be really curious and pay attention to sort of the signals that are coming in from not just your customers, but also your internal teams, because that's the key in building the best products that you have. It's not just making the market needs, but also making sure that it's customers. And I've seen kind of happen both ways. I'd seen one team that was so focused on only customer requests that the product got so bloated and did everything the customers were looking for, but kind of forgot the mission the product had. And then I had another team that was so focused on here's our mission, here's where the market is, that it missed some of the, easy, simple things that the customers were asking for. So you really need to make sure as you're looking at this product life cycle, from input to feedback, that they're all tied together. So that complete life cycle, it's like an infinity loop. It's constantly sort of evolving and moving and meeting together. And I should have drawn that, but that really is the key, right? You always see that in CX, but it really is important when it comes to product as well. And then some of the additional considerations, really, if you do product operations really well, the big thing that you will see, and I did see this as a big change, is that it becomes more of a product-led company. So rather than being sales driven or customer driven, where someone who shouts the loudest or the one who escalates the most gets the features in, having a good, consistent, streamlined operation makes it easy to become a lot more product-led. It also makes sure that the PMs then have a voice, because now you're no longer kind of called for not delivering something, but you're really making sure that you're taking everybody's input, delivering it on time, but that allows you to also scale for sustainable growth without having to do a lot of the admin task. You have this team that you can rely on that are partners. So they are your partners in crime that really help you kind of driving the product to that next level. And it really is as much important now than before, given what we've seen, especially with AI, and making sure the ethics and the responsible governance is also part of it. So your SOPs are kind of tracked, made sure they're put in place, and you're constantly engaging with your legal and compliance team. Because we've seen that as well, where sometimes in the past, you could wait until the product was done and get a sign off from the teams. You can't do that anymore. You have to really bring them in early. They need to be part of the process, because if there's things that they need to know and are aware of, especially around data and privacy, the earlier the better. Because sometimes you get ready to release a product only to be stopped by them getting their sign off, which would take another 2 to 3 weeks, and you've already sort of lost the time. And so that becomes really, really important as you're looking at product operations, is thinking about the future, what could change and what needs to happen as well. And then finally, this is sort of my last slide, and I think you all probably see I have a lot of bridges. And the reason I put this bridge is it's in Newcastle in the UK, and it's one of the new bridges, but it's really done in such a way that it tilts when the boats come in. So in the old days, the bridge would sort of open up. This is a pedestrian bridge that tilts. And the reason I put this bridge up, because it's just like operations and product ops. You have to evolve and you have to change. So you have to look at what's really going to be different and what's new, and be able to evolve and adapt to things that need to change. And that's really the key around product ops. It's no longer sort of project management or manual coordination between teams, making sure everybody is lined up. It really is sort of building these intelligent systems that allow the product managers to become focused on what they really do, which is, making sure they're talking to their stakeholders, the customers, looking at where the pulse of the market is, and building the the product, right? The focus should be on the build of the product and not everything else, not the operating aspects of it, like status reports or chasing all these different teams, but really building what one thing that I say is what they do best, but also making sure that they're talking about the product to the customers. Their time they spend is really around what the product does, why they've done it, and once it's released and launched, really be the evangelist for the product. That's what their focus should be on. And this specific team can really help them do that because they don't have to be big. In the past, you'd have each team probably having people that would do some of these things, or they would have junior product managers to do this stuff, then effectively you're training the product managers wrong, right? You're not really teaching them to be real product managers. You're giving them stuff you don't want to do. And I've seen that happen in some of the places I've worked as well. And that was one of the reasons why we created this team, because I didn't want each of the teams to be doing the same thing, but also learning sort of product the wrong way. And so having such a team helps us sort of, have that roles and responsibilities kind of well defined, but also depend on each other to be able to provide that solution and work with each other. And this team knows the tools, knows what needs to happen, and can certainly help as we move forward. And so if you really want to scale and you want to, your PM team grows or your products grow or you have M&A, it really becomes important to make sure that you have this centralized, I call this communications hub. You have this centralized team, not more than, even in biggest of organizations, it wouldn't be more than 10 people. And they really can drive I can tell you there were times I had like 200 plus PMs and less than 10 in this team that would really drive some of these things, but they brought consistency. The customers felt we were one product instead of 20 products, and that made a huge difference. And so when we talk about operations and product ops, like I said, it's just not about managing it, it's also how externally it's viewed, how externally your product is viewed by customers, partners, and everyone that touches and uses your product. With that, Denise,
That
I will stop share.
no, it was amazing. You were definitely speaking to me in so many ways. I have shared the pain that you have described. So I'll jump in, but while I start asking Uma some questions, just a reminder for those of you that have joined live, please drop any questions that you have into the Q&A section. This is an incredible opportunity to ask the expert. So with that, Uma, my first question is, you say without product ops, strategy doesn't execute. Can you share a story from your personal experience where you really felt that this small but mighty team made the difference between success and failure?
100%. In At Infor, we had this. We were driving this cross functional initiative, and it was really driven from product. So everything was very much product driven, and it was with multiple teams. So we had multiple products, multiple teams, and the platform team, everyone coming together, and marketing and services being able to uptake the changes that we've made. And without this team, there was no way we could have coordinated every one of them, have all of these teams do the same thing. It took us 6 months because we didn't have this team before as we were driving it. It was just impossible for each team would go to the platform team asking questions. And the platform team was like, how many teams do I have to answer, right? Because they can't answer like 10 teams all the time. And so having this team streamline that, get that information, actually even set up like cross-functional, days of meetings to understand sort of the dependencies and the requirements made a huge difference. And we set it up in each city. We went through where the product teams were to really drive through that. So the platform team didn't feel like they were pulled in 100 different directions. But I've seen that even in very small companies as well, where, there's an initiative that you need to get a new product out. And just having even one person drive through is really important. And this was in a small company that we were doing with computer vision. And it was just impossible because we had just 4 teams, but even the 4 teams had differing priorities and trying to get something out the door. We already these teams were too small and they were doing too much. So it was impossible for them to get things done. So there's countless stories like that. I'm sure you have them too. So it's just having someone that can kind of drive, but also know what to ask is
Yeah.
really important because that really is the key.
Yeah, I think that to your point, it's like the context is key. It's not people that are paper pushing, right? They really have to understand the business, but when they do that well, to your point, like you're getting such lift on that platform team in your example, that otherwise they just would have been sinking all this time into meeting after meeting, just dependency management, I'm sure. Well, great. Maybe we've got some other questions rolling in. So we're just establishing product ops. What would your advice be on where to begin and provide clarity to the org what product ops is?
Yeah, this is a really hard one because it's not easy. Most people think of it as one thing. Like I said, people generally think of it as execution and go, yes, as long as, product's delivered and it's great. Um, where I say I think the important piece of it to start, I think the execution, getting the right tooling, whether it's, whether you use Jira, AHA, any of those, that's all fine and great because everybody knows it's done. But I think where you really should spend some time when you're doing product ops, and at least I've learned this the hard way, is around the prioritization, because that is really the key. Because you need to keep the stakeholders happy and giving them visibility into what you're building and why is really key. And if there's any reason for not picking up some of the things that they've asked, having that in front of them is also really important. So if there's anything that you could do, I would say make sure that your intake and prioritization is something that you get. It shouldn't take too long, but do it well. And then you'll have allies for life because they'll help you with everything else that needs to go on.
And maybe unpack that one a little bit more, like, because the PM is ultimately the one prioritizing and saying, "Hey, these are the things that we're going to work on." How have you seen it successfully working dividing between the product manager or managers and the product ops folks?
So the thing that for us that was important is what product ops did for us is the tooling. So
Hmm.
having the kind of right tooling, making sure that we put input. So I'd give you the craziest of examples. We'd have a lot of people come and say, hey, I asked for this thing and no one did it. I asked for this thing and I said, was it written somewhere? No, it wasn't. And so in some cases, the PMs would have that call, take it over. In some cases, PMs would have a call, but they got so busy with something else, they didn't put it in. So
Yeah.
it got missed. And so there were small little things like these that make a difference. So this the team kind of came up with, they created a little, it was like a little form like thing, but the tooling that would give the visibility to the teams, that was really important. So it was tactical. It was just in a form. PM said yes, no, very easy. They could see it right away that this was a no, this was a yes. For the bigger ones, it was the meeting, the setup. The PMs were still the owners of the meeting, but the setup and getting all the people aligned and getting the tooling, getting the input in, the stuff ready for the PMs, that was what the ops team did. So then each PM team didn't have to go create their own forms and their own, stuff, which would always take time. which would also mean the sales team would have to do different things for different teams. That was another pet peeve of theirs, is like, oh, this team does it a certain way, another team does it another way. So just streamlining and consistency is what that team brings. So
Great.
they wouldn't be responsible for prioritization at all. They just enable the PMs to do a better job.
Yep, that's perfect. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think to your point, different teams or different companies may run that intake process differently, but even finding ways to scale it and drive efficiency. So maybe sales or your customer success team doesn't have to go to 10 different meetings to talk about a handful of priorities is also a place where that team can probably come in and help.
Right. We did it like once. We had our internal teams do once a month, and then once a quarter we had it across the wider, sales and support. And weirdly enough, even communications wanted to be part of that meeting because they knew what was coming. So that
Yeah,
really helped us.
yeah, give them context, right? That's great. Um, Next question for you. I started in product operations as a team of one, and during my time, we've grown our product team 4x in a 3-year period. That said, how can I prepare us to scale product operations as we continue to expand and move into new geographical markets?
Yeah, this is a tough one. So, in the sense of the way I would do and the way it worked well for us, at least when we did the product ops, is when it was a team of one, you were doing everything. So now, I think the best way to think about it is, where's the biggest pain point? If the biggest pain point is around, say, launch, make sure you hire someone that, has done launch before, knows how to work well with marketing, making sure that you're giving the PMs the right things. The PMs are still responsible for the content, getting ready with the webinars and videos and all of those. But this person can help really streamline that launch, put the process in place, create a backward looking template, and that's the most important one. If it is customer engagement that you're having trouble with, then have someone like that, because the way we had seen it, or the way I had seen it, is some teams had good customer engagement and they were part of, one particular product team. Another was doing launch really well, and they were part of that launch of the third product team. So one of the things that we did, and there were one or two people, that's it, in each of these teams, but we got them all out and made them responsible for all of the teams, because it's the same process. So they don't have to do anything different because the PMs are still doing it, but this team is providing that consistency. So if you're growing your product ops, think of it as that, where's my biggest pain point? Start with that and then start expanding to everything else.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I like about what you're suggesting too is, hey, then that person, if they own launch or whatever that sub function is at product operations, they can iterate on improving it because they will have not seen just one launch, but multiple launches. And each time they're going to take those lessons learned and refine the process.
Yeah, that made a big difference, because
Yeah,
you kind of learn the best of everything or the worst of,
right.
yeah.
Right. You're like, I'm not going to do that again. We need to add something to our launch checklist. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, what is a typical PM to ops to product ops ratio? You've been talking about these small but tiny teams, and I think you gave an example a moment ago of a very large team, and it was relative. But what have you seen kind of in terms of a range?
So if we had, say, a product team of, say we had product managers of, say, 20 to 30, the ops team would be like two, maybe, or three. The team that, like I said, we had product managers of 200 plus, the ops team was 20, maybe 20, actually less than 20, but I could say 20, like 1:10.
Mhm.
It would be the ratio. I mean, when I say ops, it's covering everything, right? Like the intake would be like maybe one or two people, right? That's a smaller one. Even the tooling and stuff is, two people. So it's the launch that may be a little bit larger depending on, what we're doing and stuff. But the ops itself, like if you look at the end to end, probably 1:10, I would say.
Yep, great, great. And maybe talk a little bit about the career path side of things. Where have you seen kind of folks come in from a product operations perspective?
I've seen kind of like from um, different places. So I have seen people come from services that have done, like their, when I say services, sort of consulting, come in and do it because they've, managed projects at customer sites and they've done it. I've had some product managers who really wanted to be a lot more like outbound, having, customer engagement, wanting to be part of that customer engagement team. I've also had people come from um, engineering ops, like, do some of the tooling, those kind of people as well. So again, I think it's not like when I looked at the team and I look at the various different kind of disciplines that they need to have, they could come from various different backgrounds. But the biggest thing is, do they understand? Like we had someone from comp intelligence that was doing the intake process because they just loved it, because they wanted to kind of help around this is, I understand what needs to be done. I can provide that context and put some of the stuff, whether it's the NPS score, what are we, how do we gate it? What scores do we want to add? All of those. So it really depends. And I've seen product managers sometimes go into product ops as well because, they've done the stuff and they're like, I want to do something different. And
Yeah.
then I've had product ops come into PM as well. So it works both ways.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. I think some product managers kind of gravitate more to that operational side of things, and frankly, this is a better fit. But good to see that you've also seen sort of an exit from that too. If somebody might start there as sort of an entry level, position as it like if they went in on the more junior side and then kind of graduate into product management.
Yeah, you see a lot of that because in the past, I think, or at least I've seen that in the past too, a lot of times there wasn't quite an ops team. So a lot of times I would see PMs giving some of these tasks to their junior PMs as a learning exercise. And then, and for me, that was just wrong. And I said, this is not the way you would train a PM. And so that was one of the reasons why we and if the PM said, I want to do ops, great, right? But if not, that's just not the right thing to do.
Yeah, agreed. And what do you think are the key skills or practices that you believe are essential for building a high-performing product operations function that truly supports rapid growth and innovation? Great question.
Yeah, this one's like, especially now, I think you need to change. They have to become a little bit more of a systems thinker. In the past, they could be a lot more sort of manual, could do a lot of the things, but now they have to think different. They have to be not just be able to use the tools, but kind of build some of the tools as well. And the one thing that I always tell people, a product ops person can't take anything said to them personally. That's, I think, the key skill set because the minute you take it personally, you just can't function in this role because people always think you're there to tell them what to do, and they're not. They're not telling you what to do. They're not. They're trying to make your job easy, but they want to make sure the data is there, the visibility is there for people. So they're expecting everybody to do their job. And I think that's one of the hardest things from a skill set perspective for a product ops person.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe let's even back up quite a bit. Like, if we go back to like, when is the right time, to put in a formal product operations process or even hire that first person? Like, what are the signals that you look for as a product leader to say, now is the moment?
So the biggest that we've seen from now's the moment around product ops is really when it isn't about delivery. It isn't about getting the products, um, built, delivered on time. The PMs and engineers have a great relationship, work really well, do it. Where we see things kind of falter a little bit is when you start hearing sort of the sales team or customers complaining about, hey, what's going on? We haven't seen some things come through, or we've been like looking at it, or there's always deviation in the roadmap. It's not like the roadmap's not being done. sometimes it's over delivering, but delivering on some of the wrong things. And so starting even with one person would be a good place to start, just to make sure that, hey, these are things that we're looking at. And so you're not overtaxing your PM and pulling them in, like, multiple directions, because that's when they falter, because then it becomes, hey, PM's not doing their job. And unfortunately, it's not that they're not doing their job, they're just trying to do 10 people's job.
Yeah. Yeah, or you end up taxing like each director or each, manager ends up owning some piece to the operational process, and it's not the greatest place for them to spend their time either.
And they all do it differently. And so that's another problem that comes up when you're too large. But even when you're small, it's it's not the best. But what I would say is that even before you can hire the person, put some of these things in place, put a framework in place that will make it easier. So then you don't have to then it becomes easier to get hire a person in, because then you can explain, here are things that I need done.
Yeah.
This is where my PMs are spending time, but here's where they should be spending time. And if you can kind of show exactly where they're spending time, what's going on, you generally have a better success rate of getting someone in the seat, right, to get the stuff done,
Yeah.
especially on where the PMs are spending time. I think I use that a lot.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the point you said before. Where's your biggest pain? And if you hear the PM saying, oh, like this is taking up, a big chunk of my time, that's probably where you're starting with that framework.
Correct. Yeah.
I love it. I've got another one for you. How has AI or other recent innovations influenced your approach to product operations? And what are some of the biggest learnings or shifts that you've experienced?
Yes, so this is it's actually really good. I actually love it because it's made our life a lot easier. Because in the past, you had to kind of do a lot of the stuff yourself. Even writing stories that's one piece of it, but just even prioritization, just the basic, putting through, just take a whole list of stuff that you're getting from multiple places and just feeding it through that, basic prioritization makes a big difference. So you're not using a spreadsheet and moving things around, and it's just painful. You're missing stuff. Everything's kind of done. All you have to really do is go through, look at it, and go, oh, this doesn't make sense. This isn't done right. It makes it so much easier, because the ones that are at the bottom just go all the way to the bottom, right? And then it's the same thing around even like writing user stories and things like that. You PMs would spend a lot of time doing it. Don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. They can spend time talking to customers, because that's what they were missing. They were not talking to customers. They were spending a lot of time, or not even talking to sales, or talking to the stakeholders, whether it's partners, any of the people. They spend all their time writing stuff, doing things. All of that has gone away. So it makes a lot easier. Even some of the things around, generating videos for launches and stuff is like touch of a button, which has made, again, their life easy. So they're able to talk better about the product than spending time creating something, right? So there's been so much improvements on the pieces where they spent most of their time, that now they're free to actually focus on the why, which they never used to. So not that they didn't, but that was the last thing, because they were so focused on trying to get the things done right, for out the door. So
Right, you're
it
focused on the mechanics,
yeah.
instead of really the essence of what the role is. That makes a ton of sense. And you were also highlighting before, like you've seen AI getting used in the status reports and things like that. And maybe some of that is purely the analytics itself that you're going to get out of a tool, an operations tool. And again, Jira, Aha, there's plenty of product ops tools out there today, or tools that help with operations. Dragon Boat has a great one as well. Are there other examples like that where you've seen the AI really help on the product ops side?
Some of them is custom built, because
Mm,
sometimes you have to build some of these for your, based on your needs and your company's needs as well. because you may have differing, you may have differing, like in our case, there were some things that we needed to provide, like almost like a rating that we would provide for some of these things. And so just providing that rating, weightage, all of those, sometimes you don't get them from the tools directly. So building some of those yourself, that makes a big difference. And that certainly helps as well. So for us, especially around intake, including some of the things around like even content, like some of those were, or even videos and stuff, was something that we did specific to our needs.
Mhm.
Um, and where and where you're also getting the data from, because that becomes important as well. So um, even if you use these tools, you have to kind of customize to your needs, but writing something on your own is a lot faster.
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe let me ask you one last question. Uh, you talked a little bit about where is it? You talked a little bit about the product ops really helps, the PM focus, right, on the why. And so how do you make sure that the PMs don't then disengage, right? That the product ops is adding value and really, kind of assisting the product manager to get things launched and get them into the hands of customers as opposed to the product manager then saying, okay, somebody else is doing it.
Oh yeah, that is 100% something that you do see. And one of the things that you have to make sure and have this, like it's almost like how you have sort of roles and responsibilities as you create apps, like you create applications and we all build this for specific users and specific needs. And it's the same way with the PMs. It's like you're responsible for these things. You're responsible for making sure you may not know the status. You may not need to find out the status of where exactly the engineer is on what they're building. But once it's built, it's your responsibility to, you know, it's not the testing that there is certainly QA and all of those, but it's your responsibility to make sure, is it done correctly? Is this tested? And create that, launch video or launch, materials that you need. Nobody else is going to create those. And so one of the things that for us, our PMs really liked is that they used the ops team for some of the things that we talked about, but then they knew, okay, now I have time to do these things that you're asking me to do, right? Before it would be easy. They would say, I can't do status and I can't do this and I can't do that. And like, okay, these are all gone. This is your focus. You have to get these done, right? Whether it's, are we building the right things to, are we launching them? And so that one with the human touch of the PM then becomes really important because you're talking to the engineer on how they're building rather than what they're building, right? Like being and seeing what they're doing, then asking them, when is this going to be done and when is this going to be done, right? Because that really doesn't help them much. It's good. Some people like to know and they can. That's great. But, for the ones that don't, this is their focus, right? So they can't they can't be far away from it.
Yep. So what I hear you saying is really start with that roles and responsibilities, be crisp on it, and then know that like when you are crisp on it and you supplement the team with these resources, the quality of really the core of the PM job should get better. And that's really what we can hold the PMs accountable to, right? Because then it isn't because, hey, I've had to chase all these things down that I can't do the things that I need for a successful launch, or I can't go talk to customers and hear the feedback. And that we should just expect to improve.
Correct. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Uma, I can't thank you enough for your time today. Really appreciate all the advice and guidance that you've shared. And thank you for everything that you do for products that count.
Oh, thank you. And this was my pleasure. So thank you.
Yes. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.